when we did have a conversation about this, he wanted me to draw upon the experience that we've had working across something like 4 million people in the last 5 years or 7 years on bringing changes in thinking and changes in the way people think about the new world, changes in mindsets, changes in approach. And we've done that, with large corporations in the IT industry, outside the IT industry, with all kinds of, whether Tata's, Bharat Petroleum, State Bank of India, and all large scale, like 2 lakh people, 50,000 people. And we work with schools. We work with more than 1 million kids annually, more than 5,000 schools. And we work with more than 700-800 colleges. So in all these things, the basic idea that we are working on is one. How do we ensure that each one of us is going to become a transformative agent wherever we are? Single message. Can each one of us really start out and become, in a sense, of a single point, a locus from which waves of contribution, so to speak, can enter into, first for self, for the organization, and then for society. So this is the work that we've been doing across the board. How do we translate that into the profession that you are in, which is bid and proposal management? The question that comes up is that if I, and by I mean each one of us, wants to make an impact, each one of us wants to be a transformative agent in the world that we are living in, I think there is one question that we want to ask ourselves. Am I a contributor? Not I am a worker. Not I am working hard. Not that I am creating value in the sense that I got the last contract or whatever I did and I was successful in ABC. But am I a contributor in 10 ways, in multiple different ways to multiple different people? That's the one question. And the whole conversation now for the next half an hour or so is about trying to see how we can think about this one question. Now, in order to think about this question, it's very interesting that if we can think of ourselves at 2 levels. One is what I do, which is why you are here. What you do is that you are bid and proposal professionals, but at the being level, who am I? I think we are universal. We transcend this profession. And we can take on multiple identities. As parents, as children, as citizens of this country, multiple identities. All those identities sit around the what I do, and that who am I is the most powerful thing about us. Now, if I want to be a contributor, I need to do 2 things. A, we need to first of all pour that being into whatever we do. That you'll agree with. We call it passion. We say that there are some people who seem to bring in so much passion into everything that they do. They seem to invest energy into everything. They seem to actually bring light and life into whatever activities they do, which means that they are pouring their being, pouring their who am I into what they do. And we can distinguish them from people who don't, because they seem to be somewhat detached. They seem to be functionally, transactionally dealing with you and with the work and with everyone, and you know that that's not the same. They're not exactly there. So our first question is that, can each one of us pour ourselves, pour our being into what we do? But there's a second part to the whole thing, because there's a feedback loop from the environment. And in that feedback loop from the environment, if the feedback loop is positive, that means if the work is inspiring me, then it gives us all the more, it gets into a positive spiral where then we put in a little more into the whole thing. And if the work despairs us, then we seem to want to put in a little less of ourselves into the work. Now this sounds logical, but we are going to question this logic a little as we go along, because there's one more issue there. Because a lot of people who will tell you that they cannot engage so deeply, they say they're bored of their work, I'm tired out, I don't like this, all that is coming because they believe that the environment doesn't inspire them and that they are looking forward to doing inspiring work. Our question is that if I'm a contributor, if each one of us is a contributor, then we need to ask ourselves the question that can this state of engaging passionately with everything we do and also enabling the environment to inspire us, can it be a consistent, sustainable state of affairs? So now what we are saying is that the difference between contributors and non-contributors is this. There are one bunch of guys who are complete non-contributors. Forget about them. They're not even there in this conference, I can guarantee you. They're not interested in anything. But there is a second bunch of guys, and some of us might fall in that category, who are on and off contributors. If the environment is very positive, we pour ourselves into it. If we are excited, we'll pour ourselves into it. If it's something I'm passionate about, we'll pour ourselves into it. But if it's not happening like that, if things are not going our way, then we are off. We are on, we are off. But that's not a contributor really. So an on and off contributor is not the same as a steady state, sustainable contributor. And it is steady state, sustainable contributors who make consistent, long-term impact in their profession. And they are the people who are going to build this country. They are the people who are going to build their children. They are the people who are going to build their communities. They are the people who organizations absolutely, absolutely hate to lose. The question is that these people, if we want to achieve that steady state, how do we do it? And this brings us to the next question. That if contributors have to learn to engage passionately with everything that they do, and they need to learn to stay inspired in all kinds of circumstances, then it sounds pretty heroic, right? You're saying, I want to be inspired irrespective of the circumstances, and at the same time, I want to engage passionately, not with the things I'm passionate about, but with everything I do. Whether it is so-called boring or it's not boring. Now that's the aspired state. How do we get there? And to get there, these are the two challenges. If we need to engage passionately with everything we do, then we need to transform our vision of life. We have to transform our vision of our response to life. We need to ask ourselves that how do we radically think of ourselves differently. And at a second level, if we want to stay inspired, it means that we need to reframe the environment each time. Relook at it slightly differently. So how do we do that? Let's start with the first one. How do we transform our response to life? Here is a simple meme that is actually very self-explanatory. Ask yourself how many times we feel caged. And this is an identity level thing. That's the interesting thing. It is not external. It is not happening from outside. It is what you believe you are. We believe that we are caged. We believe that we are victims of circumstances. It's not that anyone has told us or that we are actually victims. Nobody's come and told us, oh, you're a victim. No. We've slotted ourselves as victims. We've constructed a cage around us and gone and sat inside that cage, locked it, thrown the key away and said, look, I'm a victim. I'm trapped. I can't do anything. There are so many problems. And look at these guys. They're so unreasonable. I'm so pressured all the time. And how do you expect me to make a difference? I need space, I need empowerment, I need resources, I need help. All cage. Well, what we want is that the first thing that we want to do as contributors is to take on the identity, take on the who am I of creators of our destiny. That we are the people here, we are the agents of change, we are the creators of our destiny. And then comes the second part of the story, which is that how do we look at circumstances? Because these two are talking to each other, remember. So you decide to take on, this creator identity, but the next day you go and find that, oh, everyone's making demands of me. So I am working with a range of stakeholders in my life, particularly this profession. And they all seem to be making demands of me. They have conflicting demands, obviously. Sales has a different drive. The delivery guys have a different drive. Each of the different stakeholders in our life has a different motivation, has a different KPI or a different, way of measuring themselves. And they are putting pressure on different ways. They've got different styles of putting pressure. So what we see is that we frame our environment as a system of demanding stakeholders. I live in a world of demanding stakeholders. Now, once I am locked up in that I live in a world of demanding stakeholders, that's already saying that the work is not inspiring me. How can any work inspire you if all you've got are people who are putting pressure on you? No work can inspire anybody. But if we reframe that same situation, and we reframe that and say that, no, actually maybe I'm working in an ecosystem of stakeholders with whom I'm creating solutions, then we are talking a completely different language. Let me give you some examples to take my point. We work, for example, with bankers, State Bank. I'll tell you the name of the bank. And by the way, it's a celebrated case study. HBR, Harvard carried cases and all on this. And the problem was here. The issue is that if you take a branch manager and you ask that branch manager, who are you and what are you doing? That person is going to say, I'm nobody. Who am I? I'm just the bottom of the pyramid. I'm 45 years old, I'm just still a branch manager. And on top of me, there is a regional manager, and on top of me, there are general managers, right up to DMD and then MD, chairman. I'm really at the bottom of the food chain. What do you want me to do? That is, he suddenly sees, and he says, there are demands coming from head office, there are demands coming from my regional manager, there are demands every day. My branch is filled with customers who are making unreasonable demands of me. I have lived a harried life. Now you take that same branch manager, and we carried out a set of experiments where he said, if you are a branch manager and you thought of yourself as a change agent, how would you think? And we did experiments across India in across contexts. And let me just tell you the results. One branch manager in a branch outside Chilika Lake in Orissa goes and makes an impact on 3 lakh fisher people. 3 lakh fisher people, one branch manager. And what does he do? He simply goes there, engages with the community, figures out that really this is a community where the men are getting drunk through the monsoon because they have no work and they are deep in debt, and it's the women who need to be empowered. So he goes out there, figures out with all the NGOs. He doesn't do any work. He just uses the State Bank visiting card. And he goes there, gets all the stakeholders, gets them together and helps these people have alternative livelihoods and says, by the way, also put your money in my bank. So they all become his customers. So he's transformed a bunch of guys And he's transformed. So instead, and suddenly he's saying that, look, I'm an incredibly powerful person. I'm impacting 3 lakh lives. You name how many people in large companies can impact 3 lakh lives, I say. And this is one branch manager. And we replicated that story with mango growers, with someone who's serving, mango growers, someone who's serving, stone carvers in Konark, SMEs in Hosur, all kinds of people across the country, just to make the point that a simple branch manager can be an agent of change. So how we can transform our environment is really left to us. It's how we see that ecosystem, and we ask ourselves how we can reconstruct that ecosystem and start making it. And suddenly you will find that you are sitting at a very central place in that ecosystem. You are at the hub of that ecosystem because you are assembling that entire ecosystem to make a goal happen, which is that you want to be competitive or you want to win something. So you're really the most powerful person there instead of the person who's the most harried person there. It's the way we construct our sense making of the world, correct? So this takes us to the total story. So how do contributors think? So if you're a non-contributor, you have a double whammy hitting you. On one side you're saying, I'm a victim. You're saying, look, I'm a nobody. I can't make a difference in the world. I'm complaining all the time. I'm finding fault. That's inside. And on top of it, I reinforce that sense of myself with a vision of the environmental demanding. So I have everyday proof that I'm really a victim. So I'm building the proof that I'm a victim by demonstrating data from the environment every day to myself and saying, see, today A, B and C pressured me, and therefore it proves my original thesis about myself that I am stuck. So we are getting into a negative reinforcement of data cycles that are going on there. And you can flip the whole thing around and start out by saying I am a creator of my destiny. And then if I am a creator of my destiny, I am also saying that, look, here is an ecosystem that I am transforming, that I am the hub of. And so suddenly you have a new set of data hitting you every day. And that data is reinforcing the idea that I am a creator of my destiny. So you're using this double whammy of saying that I am a creator of my destiny, I am also someone who's sense-making the environment, and together I'm trying to make a difference. So this positive vision of being and a positive functional vision together, a positive vision of who am I and a positive vision of what I do, when you multiply that, we then become contributors. And when that happens, a frame shift takes place in my vision of the world itself. Because today I might have, or some of us might have, a world of constraints, and I'm moving to a world of possibilities. If you actually went to your office and sat down and read, what is my world of possibilities? It would be an interesting kind of exercise for yourself. What is the world of possibilities in which you live? I'm sure if you want to put down the constraints, we can do it in 10 minutes flat. I've seen this again and again and again. You try to put down the possibilities that we have, we'll have 2, 3 top of mind, but after that we'll run out of steam. But I challenge you to put down 10 possibilities you live in. 10 huge career possibilities, huge work possibilities that each one of you live in. Try this exercise out and see what happens. And those possibilities are really the pathways to contribution. And what will you do with that pathway to contribution? What will change in my life? And what will change is this. Each one of us we may start out by first small contributions around us, in the world around us, what I call responsive contributions. And then we are doing that, and probably it's only for self and in the world around the self. And then you expand that to the next level where we start becoming huge value creators for the organization and finally transformation agents in society. How many of us are going to be transformation agents in society 5 years from now we need 5 times that number, correct? We need 5 times that number. We need every person we can get to be transformative agents, if we want to really do something about this country. And this is really what is the key to where we are going. Okay, now I'm going to throw it open to the house, and I'd like reflections on the first question. How do I view myself at work? How relevant is this question in the world that we are living in the world you are living in?
8 months back, I was in the Indian Navy commanding a submarine.
Ah.
And I was in my comfort zone. I come into a new era. I only knew how to fire torpedoes at that time. I came into this. I did a MBA from ISB at that time. But the willpower within, or the feeling that, yes, there is no rocket science, and this is a place where with a bird's eye view across verticals, I will be able to survive and then grow and then contribute and one day become the best in profession.
Okay, what's interesting is he made 2 statements. One is he talked about the being, where he said that I had the will, and number 2, he talked about the reframing of the environment, because he said that, look, it allows me to understand that my work gives me a bird's eye view of the whole system. So he was able to reframe the work also in a meaningful sort of way. He was able to see meaning into that work, and at the same time he was able to see that if he applied himself, could do something about it. So that's the combination that led to the transformation, right? Would someone like to comment about the second one? How many of the people in your profession view this as a system of threats, or as a mixture of forces, or as a system of opportunities? How many times are these things seen as opportunities? Why is it that some of us do see it and some of us don't? Would anyone like to comment on that?
I joined this role 1.5 years back, so relatively new as a bid manager. So the challenge was this newness, this trickiness of stakeholders. So I tried to downplay that and tried to look at the positive side of it, which was the opportunity that you get with, to work with so many people, different teams. And the opportunity that I got was that I went on site for my first assignment, and now it's
okay.
on
So
site.
here the opportunity that she was seeing was that here is an opportunity for me to engage with a wide range of people with different backgrounds, with different things, and obviously the learning that comes from it. So you see, every person who gives a story is also talking about reframing the environment on one side, and obviously on the choice to decide to do success in that whole thing. But that's the second thing that's happening. The purpose of my work, that's a little deeper, and that's a little harder. Why do we go to work every day? What is the challenge with having an EMI view of purpose of work? EMI can be satisfied any which ways, first point. And the second point is that if you did that, then the issue is that it's very easy to slip into a victim mode, because you're saying that if I was rich, then I wouldn't need this job. So actually it is a formula for falling into a victim mode, correct? It's the fastest way to fall into a victim mode. So that's the issue. The kind of purpose of work is important, because if my purpose is small, it's very easy to slip into a cage. While if your purpose is large, most cages won't fit you. You will be much larger than most cages. So it's very critical that we have this purpose of work which is unfolding your possibility, because then it allows you to see every situation as a learning situation, as an exposure situation, as an opportunity situation, as a situation of transformation. And now comes to the fourth point. What is the extent of my contribution? Am I today contributing only for self, and which is I'm just being responsive to what needs to be done because I have to do well in my job? Or am I someone who is actually working by saying that no, I'm not only working for self, but I'm also trying to genuinely transform and create sustainable value for the organization? We must understand that winning a bid is not equal to sustainable value. It is equal to responsive, because it's a task-based thing. Sustainable value means something else altogether. So have we thought about it? Have we gone deep into the subject? of what sustainable value for the organization means. And are we really architecting it? And then comes the largest question is that can I use my profession? Or can I use my expertise? Can I use my knowledge? Can I use all that I have with me, all my capabilities, to really use that to also widen the zone of my impact so that whether in and through work or outside work, I'm actually impacting the larger environment in which I live. Because whether I like it or not, we are all people who are getting impacted by that environment. So what is it that we are going to do to make a difference there? So these are some questions that are still left with, clarifying the purpose of our work, clarifying the extent of our contribution. The first two are relatively easy. The second two are the ones that need a little more thinking. All the best. Thank you.